Hello and welcome to another episode of CYC. Today we have with us Gabriella, Dan, Mark and Bossy. We've got a pretty exciting episode. We're going to be discussing something that's very relevant to us as young Christians. So we're going to ask the question, what does it mean to break from the world? Inspired by a verse in John 15 verse 19 says, if you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I choose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. So in our Christian lives, we have a notion that we don't belong in the world. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. We have kind of a separate identity. So what does that really mean for us? What does it mean, Mark?
Well, I like this quote that was in, I heard in a Saint movie. It's from a song in the same movie. And it says, it pretty much sums it up. It says, I'm living in the world, but the world does not live in me. I love the people of the world, but hate all sins. So it's that I'm part of this world, but the world does not affect me in any way. Like I don't dwell in and do the things that people do in the world. But my citizenship is of heaven, like Saint Paul says.
Gabriella, did you have something to add?
No, I was going to say that exact.
He stole it.
Yeah, he stole it. Yeah.
It reminds me of Pope Shenouda's poem that he wrote. It's very famous.
Yeah, I want nothing of the world.
Yeah,
it's such a nice poem. Yeah.
Which part did you like about it?
I love the point, the part where he's talking about like we are divine breath, like we are these, like God has given us like all these amazing gifts. Like why would we want anything of the world? Like when we see Christ on the altar and we get to partake of him and like all these graces that he's given us. Like usually when they talk about the gifts they've like given us, we've been born into Christian families, the church, things like that. But to talk about it as in like, you know, we've got Christ in us, we've got divine, like Christ breathed this breath into us. So and he's like, and the way he talks about it, like you can tell that he just wants to be with God. Like it's like, I want nothing of this world. Like, you know, I hate it and I hate all sins and it's such a beautiful poem. Like,
yeah. I think he wrote that the world is too poor to give me.
Yeah.
That same. Yeah. So what is, like when we say the world, you know, what does that mean? And why is it important for us to renounce the world and to be proud of that citizenship that Mark was talking about? Bossy, what does it mean when we say like the world? Why is the world such a bad thing?
Look, I don't know. I'm curious. Like for example, I'm in the car and I'm listening to a song. Firstly, is it wrong? Is songs wrong? Like, is it of the world? Like, for example, if I'm listening to a song and it makes me think about God, does that mean is it wrong? First of all, like I'm with God, I'm thinking about God, but the song is of the world. So I don't know. I don't know.
But if it's making you think of God, is it of the world?
There's a verse that kind of defends that. Like there's a verse that defends that. It's like it says, I think it's from Philippians. It says, to the pure, all things are pure. So I think, you know, some people could listen to a nice song, you know, like and there'll be some words about like unity and love, and maybe it's not in the Christian aspect, but it just reminds you of God and because of your pure mind. I think that's really when our heart dwells in heaven, but our bodies are still on earth. Like I think that's when we reach that stage, because you know our hearts and our minds they're focused on heaven, and when we hear things and we see things on this earth, we're really like we're still focused on heaven, and we still find the heaven in the world. I think that's really important.
But I think sometimes that can be dangerous because we can fall into that trap and be like, oh, I see, like I'm seeing God in it, but like the devil can really use that to like tempt us.
Yeah, of course, like you're not going to go clubbing
like
and look for heaven there.
Yeah, like oh, like I see, yeah, exactly.
It's funny. One of my friends, he was having a really hard time. Like everything was kind of going wrong, and then he got in the car and like as he like turned the engine on and everything, the radio came on and it was Swedish House Mafia. You know, don't you worry, child. It goes, don't you worry, child. Heaven has a plan for you. And we're like, he heard that and he felt like it was giving him like an instant answer to his prayer. And I think like it's kind of like what you guys are saying, that God he can use everything and anything and anyone to speak to you. But when it, you know, we have to know like to draw the line, like what is something that's worldly that will take me away from God, and what is something that you know is.
But I have
like the story about when you know Jesus first saw Peter, James, Andrew, and John in the boats, and he said, "Launch out into the deep." You know, like they were out into the deep with God, and they saw all the blessings of the fish and stuff. And I remember we had this camp where the theme was launching into the deep, and the question came out like, "What if you know my friend is on the shore?" Like, just think about it. Like, would you leave the side of God and all those blessings to go back to the world?
There's actually a really beautiful story, something like similar to that, but I feel like it doesn't relate now that I think about it. But
It's too late. You've committed to the story. You're gonna tell us.
it's like this monk was like prayer walking, and he felt very like in communion with God. Like he felt the presence of God like so much, and he saw like in his peripheral vision like 2 angels walking with him, but he refused to look because he remembered the verse like no angels, no principalities, no dominions or whatever shall separate me from the love of God. So like if we're in that like the presence, like we shouldn't let anything like separate us from that love and that like that union. But I have a question. Like I feel like we've talked about like, you know, like what like what it means to break from the world, but I don't understand like how to hate the world. Like, cause some of these things can be so pleasurable. It's so easy. Like it's such a subtle thing like that can just creep into our life. Like this love of the world. Like I don't understand how we can like daily make a decision to like to renounce. I don't know. I really struggle with that. Like.
Yeah. What do you guys reckon, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's just about perspective. Like, you know, like God created things to be pleasurable. He created like, Abuna Mark was always telling us something really nice. He goes, he could have just had a little side like a tank, and you'd fill up fuel every morning, and that's your energy. God created food, and you made food for us so that we can enjoy food, and we enjoy the pleasures of the world. But the problem is that Satan tries to use the pleasures of the world and makes them like, you know, evil. And that's when it becomes a sin. That's when it becomes something that's worldly. Like, you know, everything God created in the world can be used for His glory. So it's just about perspective, you know.
Yeah,
if we do everything for the glory of God, then it's nothing's wrong with it. You know, like same with music or food or whatever.
It's about changing our perspective. You know, like changing the perspective from relying on worldly things to relying on God. Like even when, like Satan, like Dan was saying, Satan tries to use the pleasurable things in the world to tempt us and to kind of attach us to the world. And he even did that, tried doing that with Jesus himself when he was in the wilderness and he was hungry, and he offered him, he said, turn this stone and make it into bread. But Jesus, relying on, you know, the heavenly things and to you know, sustain him, said, man will not live by bread alone. And that's you know, kind of detaching himself from the reliance on the world, because we don't rely on anything in this world, but our reliance is completely on Christ.
I think it comes down to like, if something like, and there are a lot of things, like St. Paul says that all things are lawful for me, but not all things are good for me. Like, there's a lot of things that God has given us, and they're beautiful, and like they're meant to be enjoyed and that kind of thing. But if we love them instead of God, or we love them more than God, or they take away a bit of our heart away from God, like we need to give God our whole heart, maybe that's where
But
the line comes in.
how do we do that? Like how do we see something and we like it and we know that God has given it to us to enjoy, but how do we detach from that and be like, no, you know, my heart is God's? Like, how?
What do you guys think?
I was reading a really nice book called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, and he gave some like really practical advice to see God in everything. So like he was working as a monk in a kitchen, and you know, they'd give him all the rubbish jobs, and he used to enjoy them really much because he felt like he was doing everything for God. I'm cleaning God's cups. I'm cleaning the cups of God, and God's just standing here right beside me and he's talking to me. And by continual sort of practicing the presence of God, he made everything enjoyable, and he made it very easy to become detached to the world. And like an extension from that is that anything that separates me from God, that's worldly. Like, you know, we always like we were always told in Sunday school, you know, listen to music, that's fine. But if you feel that after you listen to the song you can't pray or you can't speak to God, then it's probably worldly. It's probably distracting from God. So it's not, you know, it's not really good for you to do.
Yeah, I think we can use like the fruits of the Spirit as like a diagnostic tool. You know, like if something is a habit or like even a friendship, whatever, and it's robbing you of your peace, it's taking away your joy, it's stopping you from seeing God's glory every day, it's stopping you from enjoying your prayer life and your church life, and enjoying the mass and having like, you feel shame and you feel guilt. These like tools for us to know, because the Spirit speaks to us. Like the Holy Spirit grieves in us. Like he's sad, he's upset when we've strayed away from God. That type of thing. And there's a really nice verse in James chapter 4, and like St. James is like kind of ripping into us a bit. He says, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever makes himself a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. So he's calling us like adulterers and like we're cheating on God, like we're being unfaithful in a relationship. And like we're cheating on him because we're filling our hearts and love that should be all his with stuff in the world. And maybe not all of it's bad. Some of it's very toxic. Like we think about society today and all the stuff that's going around. Like some of it is very bad. Some of it is just, it's taking up a spot that should be God's. Like, our heart should be completely for God's.
Yeah.
I think like it's not a bad introduction. We've kind of fleshed out some really nice ideas. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be coming back for another half to keep talking about breaking ourselves from the world. All right, welcome back to another exciting half of CYC. We're going to continue our discussion today about how, as young Christians, that we're in the world but not of the world, and how a few church fathers have written things like we have to detach ourselves from the world, and there's certain parts of society today we have to renounce ourselves from. And we were just having a little discussion about how sometimes that can seem a bit impossible, like a bit absurd, that we have to renounce ourselves, we have to actively detach ourselves from the world, and that it's a bit hard, maybe it's a bit boring, that as youth there are parts of the world that we don't like engage in. So what do you guys reckon? Would you agree with that? Mike, what do you think?
Actually, Gabriella had a really nice answer to it. Like, she was telling me before, Gabriella, if you wanted to.
No, I was making a comment about how like I thought that like it's one of the biggest struggles for like youth today is to detach themselves from the world, because we're so assimilated like with society. Like, you know, we go to like Western schools, things like that. We're not really around people of like similar culture, and so I think it's really hard. Like, we're in kind of limbo where we don't know where the line is, what we should attach ourselves to, what we shouldn't. And I think that like especially in like Western society, it's a lot, like it's one of the crosses that like we've been chosen to bear. Like, but it was just a comment, like it wasn't really an answer to the question. So what do you think?
I thought it was really beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, so
Dan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think maybe like the devil tricks us by saying it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we see a lot of the saints, they really enjoy their time with God. It's not like, it's not something burdensome, you know? Like, they really want to spend
Like
time
you're saying
with God.
about Brother Lawrence and how... Like,
Yeah, exactly. He enjoys the presence of God. Like, I mean, I really like a verse in the Bible that says, like, taste and see that the Lord is good,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
yeah.
taste and see, try it out. Like, let's go out of our comfort zones for a bit and
Yeah.
try and spend some, you know, real time with God, some quiet time with God, and see, and you might be surprised of how much you actually really enjoy God's presence, you know?
I think we don't necessarily detach ourselves from, you know, doing worldly, like we don't do worldly things, but we don't detach ourselves from the world entirely. Like, I know, like at our church at St. Mark's in our parish, sorry, we have something on every single day, you know, like especially, you know, when people just finish school, we like the fathers will take them out on some days. We'll go to the beach, you know, have fun, play soccer with the kids. Like we're still in the world, but we're just within the realms of the church kind of thing. Like we're of the world, we're in the world, but not of the world. So I think it goes along with what...
How do you explain that to someone who's like not a Christian or not like, you know, really into it? Like, they're, you know, part of the church, but they don't enjoy that sort of stuff. Like, they find that extremely boring. Like, they find that...
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
So taste for yourself. I guess, but like I think that like even when people do try, like I feel like even if they might go in with the wrong mindset or something like that, so they find it difficult to see that. Like, I know me personally, when I was a lot younger, like I would try and I wouldn't see like what the big deal was. Do you know what I mean?
I think it is persistence on both ends.
Yeah.
So if you're going to...
I agree.
So if, say for example, I have a friend that maybe, you know, has never experienced the church, you know, you start, you know, taste and see that the Lord is good. You know, come to a youth meeting, you know, come hang out with just everyone in the church, just like taste the fellowship that we have in our church. Like I know, like the fellowship for me is one of the most beautiful things that we have in our church. You know, where we can have so much fun within the realms of the church. Like we don't find the need on a Friday night to look for the pleasures of the world, like going out clubbing or drinking or anything like that. We just enjoy our time within the church. And if that person, you know, maybe doesn't really take to it the first time, I have to persist. And and in turn, like we pray that they will persist also. But I think, yeah.
I think also it's like, it is a struggle again. Like, you know, even in the Bible when St. Paul talks about struggling, you're struggling against sin. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. And so you need to pray for God to give you grace to sort of struggle. And also it's like a step-by-step thing. Like, it's not like the first time you pray you're going to feel like you're in heaven, you know?
Sure.
Like, it's just, you need to be persistent. And you need to just like step-by-step try and get closer to God and detach yourself from...
And I think the more like you delve yourself into the Bible and delve yourself into like all these beautiful things like the liturgy and things like that, you realize that your citizenship isn't like here. You long to be in a place that's away from all of this and just with God, alone with Him. You know, feeling His presence, and like that's enough for you. Like that's more than enough for you. You know, like I think it's like a lot of effort on our. So what are you gonna say?
Yeah, I read this just on what Dan was saying about the. Like, it doesn't happen like overnight. Well, we have one prayer. I read this really nice contemplation on the creation, and it was saying like, why did God, who is all powerful and you know, all glorious, why didn't he just create everything in one go, like one big bang, you know what I mean? And the contemplation was that God didn't do it all in one day to show us that neither can we. So we have to continuously strive. It's an uphill battle where it's like us walking up a mountain, you know. You can't just go from the bottom to the top in, you know, like at the snap of a finger. You have to walk, you have to go through obstacles, you have to fall over, you have to take the wrong turns, and then finally you reach the top of the mountain.
Yeah, it's really nice. Bossy, do you have anything to add to that?
No,
You guys covered some really nice stuff, like Gabrielle, and what you were saying. I think is C.S. Lewis, and he wrote something along the lines of, you know, if the things of this world can't satisfy you, you know, it's a sign that you belong to somewhere other than this world. So again, it's our citizenship is somewhere else. Like, and we say that in the Mass as well. After we commemorate, you know, our family and friends and the saints that have passed away, they're no longer alive. We say, and we too, the foreigners in this world, which is a concept that's all throughout the Bible. Like in the Old Testament, like we're foreigners. We're here for a short time, but our true home is in heaven, and all of us were longing to be there.
And I think when you say it like that, when you say it as like heaven is your true home, it makes you look forward to it so much more. Like, and when you develop a relationship with the saints and all these things, it makes it feel like a family. Like, it makes you really look forward to like just going there. And I think also having that mindset, also like whatever happens in this world, it just doesn't faze you. It should just be another thing to make you closer to that goal, to make you closer to getting home. Like, so I think, yeah.
Okay, right. And I think, Dan, you touched on something really important when you said, you know, taste and see that as taste the sweetness of God, like contrasted to, you know, wanting to try something that's of the world. And St. Paul really said something really nice on that in Philippians 3. And he said, yet indeed I also count all things lost for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ. So like, he's saying things that I had to sacrifice to come closer to God, I actually now, I see it and I look at it as rubbish. Why? Because what I've gained in exchange is the sweetness of Christ, the excellence of knowing Him. Like, knowing Christ is the most valuable thing. It makes the sacrifice of worldly pleasures and like going out and having fun, doing what everyone else is doing, it makes it like, you don't want that. And you sound like Pope Schnutter and you're like, I don't, you know, I have not,
exactly.
Yeah.
Pope Schnutter actually talks about this. He's saying like, we get to a point where like, we always feel like, oh, we're giving to God, we're giving to God, we're giving to God. But when you come to that, like, to a point where you realize like that, you know, like this honor of knowing God, like He is the giver, not the taker. So like, we should like going in with that mindset that when we go to God, we're taking from Him, we're not giving to Him, we're not giving up anything really. We're taking from His love, His peace, His, yeah.
Exactly. When we talk about detachment from the world, it's not a permanent thing, you know, like it's taking the time to, you know, separate ourselves from the world, to spend more time with God. Not all our time should be spent and should be, you know, focused on God, but we still have a duty towards, you know, people that maybe aren't in the church mountain. Moses completely detached himself from all the Israelites, all the Hebrews, and he went up on this mountain and he saw the back of God. Like that's as much glory as anyone has seen on earth, not including the transfiguration, but like in the Old Testament, that was as much glory as anyone has seen of God on earth. So why did He come back down? He came back down to illuminate the rest, like to lighten up the rest of the Israelites.
And it's like what, like Jesus has given us a command. Like we're in the world, not of the world, but while we're in the world, He's given us a job to do. He said, "You are the light of the world, and you are the salt of the earth." So we have that our true citizenship is in home, but while we're here, we have a job. We got a job to do. Bossy, what do you think about that? What do you think about that command from Jesus?
Well, about the command is very good, but like even that point, like some servants use their Facebook page as a way of getting to people they serve. Like, for example, me, I don't really like social. Like I'm saying not me. I'm saying in general. Like someone that doesn't like social pages, Facebook, whatever, but they get Facebook for the sake of the people that they serve. They get the page to keep in contact with them, and it's very, very nice. And also, like when I think of detachment, like the first example I think of is the monastery, like the monks. Like when I went the first time to the monastery, they told me there's a movie room there. I got so excited. There's a movie room in the monastery. How can this be? But then I realized that they just watch the same movies, which is still very good.
Yeah, that's really nice. Dan, what do you reckon about being the light of the world and the salt of the earth?
Yeah, it's part of our calling. Like, I mean, like God sends us to earth for the reason, like we're ambassadors for heaven, you know, like heaven is our nationality and we've come to, you know, preach heaven to the people here on earth. We're not all called to become monks and actually leave the world and just live in solitude with God, but we're called to, you know, to be the light of the world, you know.
Exactly right.
I think like also when we live this way, like when we live according to the fact that like we are foreigners in this world, people will see that there is a different hope in us, and like that.
There's that sweetness of Christ.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that in itself is being the light of the earth and the light of the world and salt of the earth. That in itself is like the best form of evangelism. People seeing that you have hope, you have this thing that you're longing for so badly, and like that gives you so much more satisfaction than anything else could ever give.
Thanks for your contributions, guys. I think like I personally have a better understanding of what it means to be in the world, not of the world, and detachment, all that kind of thing. It's been a really nice discussion. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and God willing, we'll see you for another episode soon.